أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين صلوات بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Alright, today's lesson we're going to start with wudu. Who knows where in the Quran there is mention of how to do wudu? Without looking at the board. Surah Ma'idah, verse number 6. Okay, this verse in the Quran talks about both wudu and tayammum. Today we're going to discuss about wudu. And in this verse of wudu, we find that there are points of contention amongst the translators and the interpreters of the Quran, who discuss about the point of how wudu should be done, whether the wudu that a person does should be done from the points of the finger to the elbow, washing up, or from the elbow down to the points of the finger. This is one of the points of contention. The other place that we see conversation happening regarding this ayat is about feet in wudu, and whether one should be washing their feet or if one should be wiping their feet. We find that these are discussions that we have all the time. However, the point of these conversations that we'll have regarding these topics is not so that you can go out and go challenge people and say, hey, you're doing this wrong. Islam is not a faith that was spread by people who ran up to other people and said, hey, you're doing this wrong. Hey, you're doing this wrong. You shouldn't do it like this. No. The points of these conversations is for you to develop the confidence within yourself that your fiqh, your actions have some basis behind them. And should someone question you, you have the ability to answer those questions. Does that make sense? So this doesn't mean you, when you see your friend going like this, you say, you're doing it wrong. No, it's okay. If someone should ask you and start a conversation with you, you know how to answer those questions and be able to support your faith. Does that make sense? Okay. So this verse reads, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu idha qumtum ila as-salati faghsilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum ila al-marafiq wamsahu bi ra'usikum wa arjulakum ila al-ka'bayn. This is the first half of the ayat that we're going to talk about today. Right? So I'm going to write the translation for you, because I don't think any of you are going to be happy to write the Arabic, are you? Show of hands, who wants to write the Arabic? Okay. Alright. So, we start with Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. Anybody know what that means? Okay. All those of you who believe. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. All those of you who believe. So Allah is now specifying who He's in communication with. So we see He's in communication with the believers. Right? إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. If you stand for prayers, okay, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم. If you stand for prayers, then now what Allah is doing is He's starting to describe to you, He's explaining the conditions that if you're standing for prayer, this is the precursor. He says, then if you want to stand for prayers, or if you're about to stand for prayers, then do this. Here's your precursor. You understand? Exactly. Now we're getting into it. Now He's explaining to you how to do wudu. فَاغْسُلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. Any ideas what that means? فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. فَاغْسِلُوا, ghasal, then wash. وُجُوهَكُمْ, your faces. You were going to say that, weren't you? I knew you were going to say that. Wash your faces. Sorry, my handwriting is not fantastic. Okay, so we've gotten the first step in wudu. The first wajib mandatory step taken from the Quran is what? To wash your face. Now, in a separate conversation, we could ask, what is the extent of your face? What is encompassed in your face? Who can answer that question? Anyone? How do you measure it? Like this?
From ear to ear.
From here to here? Wait, hang on a sec.
From ear to ear.
From ear to ear is one suggestion. Anybody have another idea? Huh? These two? These two. Okay. So the other suggestion we have is whatever is included between your middle finger and your thumb. Any other suggestions? No? Anyone? These two? What's included between your pointer and your thumb? All of them?
From head.
Okay. And then what about the length?
Wait, from your forehead to
From your forehead, from your hairline to where? Chin. What's included in the chin? This?
3 times.
No, just the point of the chin?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's talk about it. The extent of the face is everything that's encompassed between your middle finger and your thumb fully extended. Right? Fully extended. Now let's say, for example, I have really giant hands. And my hands encompass, let's say, from my ear here to my ear here. Or let's say I have really small hands. And what's encompassed in this is really just from here to here. Does that make sense? Oh.
Then why you have to do it like that?
Okay. It's in Arabic. It's a term used as mustawi al-khalq, meaning of average creation, meaning the average expectancy that a person's hand should encompass what amount of their face. Make sense? So meaning on average, the average person's hand on their face encompasses till about this point here and this point here, as an example. As a precaution to ensure that you've included that point, what you do is you wipe a little bit further and maybe you get all the way back to just about the side of your ear. And you get all the way to the side of your ear. Now, in length, what did we say was the length? Hairline to chin, correct. You guys got one right. There you go. From the start of your hairline down to your chin. Now, here's a question. Let's say somebody has a really high hairline. Let's say the hair starts like back here. Or let's say somebody's going bald. Does that mean as you're going bald, you have to like go further and further to start your wuzu? No. The same principle applies. Mustawi al-khalq, the of average creation, of what the average expectation is for a person's face to include from this point down to the chin. Okay? So we've covered now how it is that someone should be expected to wash their face. Which hand do you use?
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Are you sure it's not the left?
100%.
Any disagreement?
No. Right hand.
Survey says?
Right.
Mahdi? Right, okay, we're on. Okay. So you use your right hand, you cup water in your right hand, and you wash your face, right? Starting from your hairline
To your chin.
to your chin, and the extent that fits in the span of your hand. Yes? On board? Let's continue then. Then wash your faces. فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. And your hands until, or not even until, wash your hands. Proper translation would be to your elbows. Okay? So we said, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. Now this is where we start having a point of contention where people have a discussion about how you should wash your hands, right? One school of thought says that when it says wash your hands to your elbow, that means start from your hand, the tips of your finger, and wash up to your elbow, meaning wash in reverse.
I have one question. What about the talking grounds that actually taught us practically?
We're getting there. Let's first reference the source and see if we can make a distinction, understanding of why Allah used this language in this format. Yes? Because within the language is the answer we're looking for. Now, this word to can be used in a few different formats, right? To can be used to describe from Brooklyn to Philadelphia, meaning a direction. 2 can also be used to describe a limit, right? If I told you I want you to paint this wall from the floor to the ceiling, does that mean that I expect you to start painting at the floor and paint up to the ceiling? No. Why not? Because it doesn't make sense. If you start painting at the bottom and then you paint to the top, everybody knows when you start painting, which way do you go? Top to bottom. Very good. We have a few good painters in this place. What does that mean? That means that 2 has, at least in Arabic, 2 particular formats that it can be used in. One is the format of 2 which is used to describe a direction, a flow, right? I went from Brooklyn to Long Island. I know exactly where I started and I know exactly where I wound up. That's the way that this 2 is typically interpreted among certain schools of thought. Amongst our school of thought, we find that this 2 is interpreted as being a limit, meaning just the point of stopping. Or starting, for that matter. It's not indicating whether we're starting from this direction or ending in this direction. It's just indicating that this is the limit. Make sense? Now, how do we prove that? One is the basic use of the word has the ability to contain this meaning. The other factor is that the word surrounding this ila or 2 is hand, yad. Right? فَاغْسَلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. أَيْدِيَكُمْ, your hands. Right? This yad in the Arabic language refers to not just your hand, not just your fingers. It refers to your fingers, the palm of your hand, your wrist, your forearm, your elbow, your upper arm, up until your shoulder. Now, we start seeing some of the logic and the intellect behind the use of this phrasing in this fashion. Meaning that if this to your elbows was not included, we would understand that the washing of your hands was up to your shoulder. So in this case, we see that this is a clause enclosing the limitation of hand. We've now managed to support our conclusive statement to say that the direction of how you should wash your hands is not included in this verse. Does that make sense? So we said, let's go back to the beginning now. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسُلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. Now we've completed 1/2 of our wudu. Now let's talk about washing our hands and see if we remember exactly how we're supposed to do this. Which hand do you wash first? Right. Which hand do you wash second? Where do you start washing your hands? Huh? From where? From elbows to hands or fingertips? Fingertips. Anybody in disagreement?
No.
Okay, maybe the guy who doesn't have fingertips, right? Everybody has fingertips? Alright. So now let's say we have to wash from our elbow down to the tips of our fingers. Let me ask you a question. Do I have to wash between my fingers?
Yes.
Do I have to wash the inside of my elbow? Okay, how do I know what point is the inside of my elbow?
2 inches above your elbow is basically where you start.
So one suggestion we have is to start washing 2 inches above your elbow. 2 inches is a lot, isn't it? Really, what you need to do is you need to... Technically, 2 centimeters would be acceptable. The way to ensure that you've encompassed your elbow completely, right? If it's this point, or slightly above it, or slightly below it, and on the inside you can't really tell where your elbow is, right? You start wiping a little bit above, where you're sure that this is now your upper arm and not your elbow anymore. To ensure that you've encompassed your entire elbow. Does that make sense? And then you wash down. Now as you wash down, you have to make sure you've encompassed everything. What about what's under my ring?
You have to take them
Take it off, okay. Wash?
Yeah.
Okay, take that off. Alright, well we'll use the right hand. I'm going to keep my watch on, I don't trust you guys. I take my arm, and I start pouring. Where do I pour? Here? 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 Okay, there we go. So I start pouring from here. I start wiping. Is that enough?
No, you have to run it
On the
through.
bottom.
Now here's the thing. If you can ascertain certainty, and you can be sure that you've covered every single piece of area between your fingers, it's enough. But Let me put it in perspective for you. Let's say you thought you did it right, but you didn't. You go and you read your namaz. You go and you pray. Is your prayer correct?
No.
So meaning that it's beneficial for you to ascertain that, and make sure, ascertain is a fancy word for make sure, that you've passed your water between the fingers and you've gotten the whole area wet. Everything. And then repeat with which arm? Left. Very good. Okay. Any questions up until now? Alright. Anything new for anybody? Everybody knows how to do wuzu? We're on board? Okay. Then we continue with this verse. We continue. Well, let's start again. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha qumtum ila as-salati faghsulu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum ila al-marafiq. Yes? Up until now we're up to the same point. We've talked about the caveat of using the word ila or to and meaning a limitation to describe yad or hand. Hand in Arabic is a term that can refer to up until your shoulder. From your fingertips up until your shoulder. There's another point where this becomes a very interesting conversation about the extent of what's included in yad. When we talk about, for example, the cutting of the hand of a thief. Interesting, huh? Is that right? Do you cut at the shoulder? Do you cut at the palm? Do you cut... Where do you cut?
Palms.
No, that's wrong. Because why? Why wouldn't you want to cut the palm?
Because that would be part of your
Then you
hand.
can't do wuzu.
Then you cut your fingers.
Close. Close.
And you can't do the mask.
Very good. You can't do namaz. Why? Because one of the 7 rukn that is wajib for you to put on the floor when you do sajda are what? Raise your hands.
Your palm should be touching.
Palms. What else?
Your nose.
Wait, what? Hang on, hold on. We lost it here.
Your forehead.
Hold on. Raise your hand, raise your hand, raise your hand. No calling out. Because calling out, I can't tell who knows and who doesn't know.
Knees, palms, forehead, and feet. And
Feet.
No, your toes.
Tip of your toes or feet. Both are acceptable answers. Now, when we talk about this, right? Now, see here we found a point of contention where the same word is used with different limitations in reference to the Quran. So meaning that we don't want to cut off the palm. And Islam does not say cut off the palm of any human being. Okay? To the extent where even on Yawm Ashura, we see that Imam Hussein with his companions insisted that his companions while fighting ensure that they did not cut off the hands of any person that they were fighting against. Do you see? There's a significance to the point and a beauty in the language and law of Islam. And we're seeing different points here as we can understand it. And the verse, there's also a verse in the Quran that talks about cutting off the hand, the yad. And that refers to fingers.
so what's the point of that punishment?
The point of the punishment is the fingers, not of the palm itself. Do you understand? Meaning that when it's talking about yad in that instance, we see that it's talking about a different limitation. It's talking about fingers. Okay? Now imagine, and typically the way it's described is that first you take the thumb. And then if it happens again, you take the other 4 fingers. But you never take the palm. The palm stays where it is. Make sense? Now we continue. فَاغْسُلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ أَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. Alright? وَامْسَحُوا and wipe. بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ means a piece of your head. And we'll finish this as our second point in this discussion. We'll shift our discussion to our next topic after this. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ and your feet إلى to كعبين to the joint.
Underneath the ankle.
Hang on, we're getting there. Alright. Now, let's talk about, for example, the first piece. And wipe a piece of your head. برؤوسكم. So, what does that mean? Now tell me something. The piece of the head we're talking about here, I'll give you this one. This is a gimme for you guys, okay? The piece of the head we're talking about here is the front part of your head. Yes?
Middle.
Front. Front. This is the front. We're talking about the front part of your head. Now tell me something. What if I wipe like this? Is that acceptable?
No.
What if I wipe like this? Is that acceptable?
No.
Yes.
What if I wipe like this? Is that acceptable? Okay.
There's a certain.
Let's have a discussion here. Let's say, for example, let's do a show of hands, and you guys tell me yes or no, and you have to raise your hand for one or the other. Okay? None of this holding out. I'm going to see what the right answer is, and then I'm going to say I agreed with it. Okay? Who says wiping with your fingers going forward is acceptable? How many? 3, 4, 5? Is that up or down? Is that up or down?
What do you mean wiping?
Taking your fingers and wiping like this.
Like this?
Yeah. Is that acceptable or not? What if I go like this? Is that acceptable or no?
That's where I'm going with.
That's wrong?
No, I said that's where I'm going with.
You're going with this one? Okay. How about we say like this? Is this acceptable or no? You haven't put up your hand for anything yet. Come on, man. Show me a hand.
For the first one.
First one? Okay, let's go with option 1 and option 2. Option 1. Who says option 1? The finger.
Oh, the finger?
Using a finger like this.
Wait, this finger? Or...
Any finger. Let's say this finger.
I think it's both.
I put option 2.
Pick one. Hurry up.
You can't pick two?
Option 2.
Can't pick both?
Who goes with option 2?
What was option 3 again?
I think it's both.
Option 3 was I wipe with my foot on my head. Okay,
I think both are acceptable.
now,
Controversy.
the same way we talked about there being the comfort level of actually physically wiping between your fingers and having the certainty that water has reached between your fingers is the same difference we see here in the concept of wiping your head. How it's sufficient to go like this.
To make sure you just...
It's sufficient to just go like this. Why? Because the ayah is specifically specifying wipe a piece of your head. In this one action, we've ascertained, regardless of the width, that we've wiped a piece of our head. But to give comfort and security and sense of satisfaction to an individual, typically what we do is we take the span of our 4 fingers and we wipe the top of our head. To ascertain, or to make sure, fancy word to make sure, and be certain that we have properly wiped our head. Fair? Questions?
How do you spell that word?
Yes.
A-S-C-E-R-T-A-I-N.
Certain.
Ascertain.
Yeah.
It's from certain. It's associated certain. Yes?
If a person has a mohawk or a faux hawk, how are they going to do that?
As long as it's on the top of your head, you can shift it slightly to the right or slightly to the left. It doesn't have to be exactly down the middle. This isn't bowling.
What?
Isn't bowling. You know, for bowling, you got to bowl it straight down the middle to get a strike, right? We're not worried about strikes here. Now, let me ask you something. If my head is wet and I just came out of the shower,
Dry
You
your
can,
head before you dry your head.
you need to dry it.
You need to use your head.
let's say, for example, I just made my hair and there's gel in my hair.
You have to wait that for your you have to wait for
You have to wash it
What
out.
if you have oil in
You
your
need
head?
to wait to...
What if you have oil in your head?
You have to wait for it to dry.
do it until you like wash
You can't do it until you wipe it, you can't wash it. Difference of opinion here?
No.
I think it's okay
What?
because
Same thing. You can't.
Okay, stop. Before we get into giving our own opinions or what we think things work like, not saying you did, it's always important to remember when it comes to questions of fiqh and it comes to questions of law to reference back to the law and ascertain what the law specifically says. Why? Because we find that it's a very slippery slope when we start using our own intellect or our own understanding to come to a conclusion. And within Shia Islam, it is forbidden to use your own reasoning or to, say if this, then that, to come to the conclusion of the law. We call that qiyas. And qiyas is not permissible in Sharia, in Islamic law.
what's
Why?
an English word for
Sharia would be Islamic jurisprudence, Islamic law.
chaos?
Qiyas would be making equivalencies, if then. Why? Because we see that there are many times when there is an Islamic law that is mentioned that is specific to a particular arena, and it's not something that you can transfer onto another topic. And that's the thing. Allah doesn't want us doing the transferring. He'll tell us the laws He wants us to abide by. He doesn't want us to come up with our own laws. Does that make sense? So in this sense, it's always very important to be careful about how you come to the conclusion that this is what's required of you and this is what your law is. And where you have a doubt, you should go back and check and see the source of the law and refer to the Tawdih al-Masail or a source of Islamic jurisprudence to confirm that this is what's expected of you. Now in this particular situation, you have to ensure that the transfer of wetness when wiping comes from your hand to your head and not the other way around. The other thing you have to make sure is that there are no barriers preventing your hand's ability to reach wetness to your scalp. Now, do you have to ensure that it touched your scalp? No. If you don't have incredibly long hair. If you have incredibly long hair, then yes. Incredibly long hair, I mean maybe this length, shoulder length, to that. Nobody in this room really has that problem at the moment. But what that means is, that as long as there are no barriers of prevention, it is sufficient for you to wipe your head and be satisfied that you've completed your task. If there are barriers of prevention, then you have to make sure, you have to ascertain, there you go. SAT words, man, come on, you guys got to build up your vocabulary, what's going on? You have to make sure that the water has actually reached your scalp to ensure that you've completed your task. Meaning if there isn't something preventing you, wiping is sufficient, and that's satisfactory. If there is a barrier, you have to ensure that the barrier has been removed, and the ability of the water to penetrate and touch your scalp is sufficient. Yeah?
What if you have an apple?
Well, when you have one, we'll worry about that.
Same case, no? Just make
Again,
sure
same concept, yes. But the concept is the same, is that if you find that the hair is too big or too long for it to sufficiently penetrate your scalp, then you have to make sure that you make space for it. If not, sufficient to proceed as is. Okay? Now, the next piece. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. Right? And your feet to the joint. This is a very interesting point. There are some mufassirin or people who do explanation of Quran and derive law from Quran who have said that this and وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ refers back to then wash your faces. Because waw is ataf. Ataf refers back to the section before it. What does that mean? That means when you're making a conjoined statement, right? Let's say, for example, I went to the store with Mahdi and Murtada. That Mahdi, if we took a whole bunch of series of different statements, for example, I was eating an apple and an orange. Then I went to the store with Mahdi and a box of juice. Now, logically, our intellect would dictate that this second and, this box of juice, is referring to the most closest cojoined statement, meaning that it would be saying that I had Mahdi on one side of me and I had a box of juice in my hand and I went to the store. That's an intellectual point. Now, what we can do is we can contest this and say that no, in this case, the and is actually referring back to the original statement that I had, what did I eat? Apple. I ate an apple. But I ate an apple and I had some juice with it. This is the argument, this is the argument that's being presented by some of the mufassirin. They're saying that this second statement of and your feet is referencing further back to the initial statement, which is here. Then wash your faces and your hands. And they want to say that this right here, and you don't have to write this down, is an exception, and then this goes back and continues with the original statement. Now what we say is, if Allah wanted to say it this way, He would have said it this way. He would have said, wash your faces and your hands to your elbows and your feet to the joint. But He didn't. Meaning that, in the same way with consequence to English language, if someone said the statement to you, I ate an apple, then I went to the store with Mahdi and a box of juice, that and is referring back to the most closest statement next to it, which is, I went to the store with Mahdi. In the same case, the logical consequence is you group things together that stay together. Meaning that this, and your feet to the joint, is referring back to wiping. And that's the action that is consequential to your feet. Now, who remembers how to wipe your feet? Ankle to toe.
No, toes to
Toes to joint.
Foot to joint.
Foot to joint.
Ankle to joint.
Come join me, Matthew. Come here for a sec. You're going to be our model.
You was the model last week.
Come on, come on, come on.
Come on.
It's okay. It's all right. Don't worry. That's a good idea.
Exhale.
What's your name again?
Fakhr.
Fakhr, come here, Fakhr. Now go ahead and put your foot up on this table, on this chair here for me. Okay? How do you suggest that we wipe your foot? Okay. And he said ankle to toes. Show me ankle to toes. Can you do ankle to toes? Uh-huh. Okay. Can you wipe your left foot first or right foot first? Can I wipe them at the same time?
Yes, you can.
Ah, we have a point of contention. Interesting. Thank you for being a wonderful model. Have a seat.
You can.
Okay. Let's hold on. Before we break off into private groups here, hang on. Let's vote. Option 1. Who says you can wipe both at the same time? 1, 2. Are you just guessing? You're sure? Okay. Who says you have to wipe right first, left second?
What's option 3?
There you go. Okay. Right first, left second. Let me ask you another question. Who says you can wipe ankle to toes?
You said that.
Number one with it? Okay.
I don't think so.
Come for a suggestion. Okay. Should I tell you the answer?
Yes.
Cliffhanger next week.
No.
Salawat, salawat.
No, I know.
Stay tuned.
Oh, come on. Salawat, salawat. Do your research and come back to me. I want to hear what you guys have to think about
I
that.
already know. I don't have to.
You already know, huh? So,
You don't even know how to do it.
so you teach a class next week? Hang on.
You saw somebody do it, but he never did it.
What? Well, we'll continue next week from that point. All right. I have a little bit more prepared for you guys if you guys want.
What history?
About what?
You can show that next week. Oh my god, what's your name?
I'll go cheat them on.
Now, okay. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Oh, come on. I can't have a room full of kids. I want to give all you guys a little piece of homework. No, this is good homework.
We made a contract.
With who? About what? What do you mean?
Your dad's right there, man. I don't think you can get away with this
We
one.
made a contract. I don't do it.
Who can translate for me the word? I have a word for you, and I want you guys to translate. This isn't the homework. This is before we get into this conversation, I need to know if you guys know this word or not. Who knows what the word hadith, or as we say in Urdu, hadith, translates to? Huh? Hadith? No. Sharia? No.
Sayings.
Saying? Okay. What if one of these hadith is actually not something the Imam said, but something the Imam did?
He did. History.
It's
History? Okay. Hadith, as a term, is encompassing of any particular action or saying we've taken from the life of the Ahlul Bayt, or those personalities who were the companions of the Ahlul Bayt, or Rasulullah. One of the best things that you can learn and take advantage of is these sayings or traditions that come from the Ahlul Bayt. How? There's a very, very small saying that references this, and I'm going to tell you in Arabic, and the person who can translate it doesn't have homework.
Raise hands, guys.
إمام الكلام هو كلام الإمام هو الإمام الكلام. كلام الإمام هو الإمام الكلام.
Whatever the imam does, you have to follow the imam.
No.
Say it again.
Okay, hang on, hold on.
Imam said.
Seven. Hang on. Wait. Ready? Let's try again. كلام الإمام هو الإمام الكلام. Yeah.
इमाम का कलाम सारे कलामों से बेहतर है.
Tell me in English, man. Everybody.
Oh, Imam saying is a thing better than other sayings.
Okay, close, close. You're almost
Oh
there.
my God. Dude, I got it.
What's the Imam rule or according to us now?
No. Okay, hang on. I'll explain it to you.
Wait, come on, wait.
Kalamul Imam, the saying or the speech of an Imam is that speech is the Imam of all other speeches. Close. That's why I said close.
Oh, you in this
Do you understand? Meaning that when an Imam speaks, okay.
That means he's right.
No, hold on. Here's the functionality of it. Here's how you apply this thing. What this means to say is that anything that an Imam says is precise, succinct, and to the point. Meaning that you will get the most benefit from the statement with the least amount of effort. Do you understand what that means? Yeah. That means that there is no wasted breath or space from an Imam. Anything that comes out of him has a purpose, has an authority, and it's said in the best possible fashion imaginable. Now, why are we discussing this? Many of you, if I was to ask you here, can either quote for me lyrics from a song, maybe? No. Maybe dialogues from a movie? No. Maybe a joke or a funny story?
Yes.
Or maybe something silly you heard that you remember for years and you bring up to your brother and annoy him with it every time? The point of me saying this is that many times what you'll find is that we spend our memory on memorizing things that have no length of value or purpose. For example, let's say it's a movie dialogue. It's a movie that you saw, you thought was very funny, and you memorized the dialogue from it, a line from it. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that movie dialogue will have no purpose. Because nobody will remember that movie. Or it won't be relevant. Or the functionality of it will show that, oh, this is an old guy, he quotes old movies. But it doesn't add any value to your speech. Versus the saying of an Imam is applicable to your day-to-day life, as well as it keeps its value. It's a statement that has an investment of 1400 years behind it, and it's still going, and it still has some pertinence to your day-to-day life. To that end, my assignment for you guys is to prepare and bring one hadith to discuss with the rest of the class next week. Huh?
You just
Something that the Imam said. Like that.
something like
Okay.
did or said.
So it should be one small statement, and it should be something you can source, meaning I don't want you to go home and ask your mom for a hadith. No, I want you to go open a book.
Do we need a citation?
Yes, you need a citation. Or you can use the internet. Who can tell me one really quick, easy book that you can use to get a saying of an Imam?
Quran.
Nahj al-Balagha.
No.
Quran is its own
Tajweed
book.
book. Tajweed.
Nahj al-Balagha. Nahj al-Balagha is a fantastic source. Nahj al-Balagha translates to the peak of eloquence. Meaning it's one of the most perfect ways of speaking and of speeches, and contains the most valuable information. In universities in Lebanon, even to today, whether the students are Christian or Jewish or Muslim, they study Nahj al-Balagha. Why? Because the speech of the Imam is in terms of grammatical strength and content beyond comprehension of eloquence for normal people. So it's a good way. The same way in English we study Shakespeare. Why? Because Shakespeare used the English language in a very good way. The same way in Arabic they study Nahj al-Balagha because Amir al-Mu'mineen used the Arabic language in a very good and great way. One of the forms of perfection. And in the back of that are very short sayings of Amir al-Mu'mineen which are beneficial to you, and you guys should review and read and bring one next week so we can discuss it. Questions?
No.
Comments?
No.
Okay.
This was the best class
Yes.
ever.
Wait, like, I was in my guidance counselor's office like 2 weeks ago,
What you did?
and it said, no, I have to get my schedule. And it said, 20 years from now, it's not going to matter what you wear to school.
It's a valid point. Alright, let's recite a loud salawat and we'll be done for the day.
Loud salawat.
Loud salawat.